Good evening, and welcome to this week's episode of Sounds of the Diaspora, artist to artist, a conversation with yours truly, Dion Parson. Man, I'm really excited about tonight's show because I have a dear friend of mine that's joining us tonight. Someone I've known for many, many years, played in his band, and he's just always had a great time hanging out with him. He's a saxophonist, composer, arranger, producer, and educator. Please join me in welcoming to the show Mr. TK Blue.
Hey, all right. How's everybody
TK,
doing? All
I'm
right.
good.
Hey, Dion. Okay, brother. Good to
How
be
you
here,
doing?
man. Hanging in there, hanging tough, trying to make 1 + 1 = 3. I'm trying to figure out that formula. But I'm doing okay, man. I can't complain.
Beautiful, beautiful. How's the weather in your neck of the woods?
Actually, today was 79. We got up
Okay,
to 70.
beautiful.
Yeah, man. We had to open up the windows and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Really, really
great. That's
nice.
great.
And
It's warming up. Early spring.
yeah, it's time to warm up and getting ready to launch into the summer and do some traveling. I have a lot of things scheduled coming up
Okay,
out of the
beautiful,
country. Hmm.
beautiful. So TK, we've known each other for man,
No, no,
many,
long time, man.
a long time.
Since my Arcadia days, I guess that's the 1990s.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely. When I first
yeah,
came to
yeah.
town doing that, I remember coming down to Sweet Basil and
All
hanging out
right.
and checking out the Spirit of Life ensemble.
Spirit of life, yeah. A lot of those folks are gone now,
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah, I
including
know.
including the founder, Dawood. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
That was a great band, man. Very inspirational. Like I said, Spirit of Life was a very inspiring
yeah, yeah.
band.
We
I
were there
enjoyed
from 95 to 2000. I left in 2000. They stayed on around another year, but I was doing some other things. But yeah,
it.
that band had a vibe, and a lot of
Okay,
great people at that time when we were there. Mark Gross and Clifford Adams, Ted
yeah.
Curson, a lot of great musicians came through there. So
Yeah,
we had a great time.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, we encounter a lot of great musicians. We have encountered a lot of great musicians during our time, but one of the things I like to share on this show with our audience, I like for the guests to kind of give their account of their own upbringing because a lot of times, we meet cats on the scene and we just
Hmm.
meet in that present time and don't really know how they got to where they are. And I know you and I, we've always talked about the Caribbean roots and having a Caribbean heritage. I was born in
Hmm.
the Caribbean, but I know you was born in the
Right,
same. You
right.
grew up in a Caribbean household.
Right. My father, he was born in Jamaica, and my mother was born in Trinidad. And
Okay.
just so happened that their parents lived in the Bronx across the street from each other. So
Okay.
with my grandmother, my paternal grandmother was telling me she used to fight with my father to go out and rake the leaves and clean up the yard. He never liked to do it, but as soon as my mom moved across the street, as soon as she came out and sat on the stoop, he ran and got the rake and he ran outside and said, "Yeah, I'm gonna clean up. I'm gonna clean up." Yeah. So they met up there. They got married, and then we moved to Far Rockaway, and myself and my two brothers. It was five of us all together. Then we moved to Long Island, to Lakeview, it's where I grew up, where I went to school. And unfortunately, my dad, he took a left turn and he wasn't taking care of business. And eventually, they had to divorce. So I kind of grew up basically from the age of 10 without a father. But luckily, I was always absorbing wisdom from the elders. I always had a vibe of respect and reverence for the elders in my
Right.
community. And I always wound up attaching myself to an elder who took an interest in me and wanted to guide me and give me some wisdom and things like that. And so that really made up for not having a father in a sense, and then and that kind of spirit kept me until I met the great Dr. Randy Weston, and he was
Mhm.
definitely like a strong mentor and a father figure in my life, and so that's the key. I think, as because I'm not unique. I'm sure there's a lot of men and women who grew up without fathers for various
Mhm.
reasons, But don't let that hamper you from seeking mentorship from elders, because that's the key. And to be open and to receive knowledge and inspiration and direction, and just remain open and
Right,
and
right.
humble. That's the
Beautiful.
key, because that'll help you in your life for sure. It's helped
Yeah.
me. And I tell you, the other thing too that was really important, and I always impress this upon young people, is you have to forgive.
Mm,
You have to find forgiveness in your heart. And it helped me because, of course, I was bitter. My dad didn't do anything for us, and he didn't give any money. He didn't come see us. He didn't do anything. He left when I was 10, and only time I saw him after that is when I traveled into the Bronx. He was staying with my aunt, with his sister. But one
mhm.
day I was going to NYU, and I was in the Bronx campus at that time. They had a campus in the Bronx, and I walked over to see my father. And he had a kind of a funny look. He knew that he had let us down. And I said, "Look, man, come here, man." I gave him a big hug, and I said, "Look, I'm in college. I got a full scholarship. I'm in the Ivy League school. I'm at NYU, and I'm doing okay. And I
Mm.
forgive you." And he started
Right.
crying. But that took weight off my shoulders.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
said
definitely.
that. I said, and then when I walked out, I never saw him again.
Mm, wow.
But it was okay,
Right.
because I had forgiven him, and it took that weight off.
You
And
did what you needed to do for you.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So I
yeah.
felt good after. I felt
In our
okay.
community, we have that a lot. I grew up the same way. So
Right,
yeah, but sometimes it's for the good because when you look back and you see your situation that you could have been in versus the one you're in is you may not see at that time, but it's a blessing because things may turn out differently if you know
sure,
yeah,
sure,
yeah.
sure.
So
No doubt, no
yeah,
doubt.
man. Yeah. So I want to ask you this, man. So when did you get introduced to music, the saxophone specifically?
Being in the home, it was interesting because my parents, when they were together, very early, in my very early years, they listened to a lot of music from the islands, calypso, uh, you know, stuff from Trinidad, more Trinidad than Jamaica.
Right.
And then my mom had some jazz recordings. She had Horace Silver, and one in particular she had was Louis Armstrong, and I really gravitated towards that record. So actually, my first instrument in elementary school was the trumpet, because
Okay.
I was influenced by seeing that him Louis on the cover with the handkerchief and the trumpet, and I got
Mhm.
into the trumpet. I played trumpet for 2 years, and then I wanted to play the drums in
Okay.
addition to the trumpet, not leave the trumpet. I told the band director, I said, I want to play the drum, and he was very stiff, and he was saying, no, you can't play two instruments. I said, why not? Because it's not the way it's done. And so he turned me off, and he said he took the trumpet from me, gave me the pad, the rubber pad that you have to
Mhm.
do the drum rudiments. And I wanted to hit the snare drum. I wanted to hit that thing, get the sound.
But you
And
start with the pad.
yeah, I know. And man, after about a week on the pad, I lost interest. So my middle years, middle school, and early high school, I just did sports and things like that. But in my last year in high school, I started gravitating back towards music, and the flute is what really captured me.
Okay.
And so I asked mom, could we rent a flute? That way, if I didn't like it, I could just give it back. We won't lose any money. But she never responded to that idea. And I thought she just forgot about it. And then one day I came home after a couple of months later, and there was a brand new flute sitting on the table. And she was very strict. She said to me, now listen, son, I want you to remember this. This is not a rental. I bought this. I had to fast for 2 months. I didn't have lunch. I saved every penny. I didn't do my nails. I didn't do my hair. All I did was work and save up money to buy this flute for you.
Look
Now
at
you
that.
think about that when you don't feel like practicing. That's what she told me. And I
Wow.
always remembered that, because she raised three boys by herself and worked, full time, and found time to go to college and she got her bachelor's from Adelphi, and went and got her master's in art history. So she was a huge inspiration. She made up for not having a father. She was a huge inspiration, and she really supported me musically. So when she gave me the flute, she was connected with musicians, because she used to work. She had two jobs, in fact, but one of her jobs was she used to book bands at Eisenhower Park in Long Island for during the summer concert series. They had
Okay.
different nights. They had different types of band. You had Jewish American night, you had German American night, African American night, different nights, Spanish American night, and she would book these different bands. So she had connections. So she had a classical guy come over and give me some lessons on the flute. He was playing in one of the orchestras, and it was great. So when I got into NYU at that time, the great thing about NYU, they had very few required courses when you enrolled. Your freshman year, you'd take maybe an English course, and I think two courses would only require. But other than that, you can take whatever you want. So I stocked up on psychology. I was interested in psychology. I thought about being a psychiatrist, but then I thought about, I still love music. I said, maybe I can combine the two and do something like music therapy. So my first 2 years at NYU, I completed my major in psychology. It was complete. So my guidance counselor said, you might as well pick another subject. You can have a double major. So I chose music. So I had a double major. And then I went to Columbia for my graduate teachers college, where I got my master's in music education. And I never realized my dream to do music therapy, in the sense that, the way I thought about it, envisioned it back then.
But you're doing it. You're doing
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I've been
Now,
around you
exactly.
long enough.
Yeah,
With all
right.
the
We all
elders
do it. Yeah,
and
when we
mentoring,
play.
you've been doing it.
Yeah, when we play, we definitely are doing therapy. In
Yeah.
fact, that's a theme on my recording, Planet Blue, which we could talk
Okay.
about later. But yeah, that's kind of
That's
where
great.
things went. And see, in college, serendipity played a part, because at NYU, the first year I stayed in the dorm. So the guy next to me, he was a senior in the room next to me, and we got close. We started hanging out. So he used to invite me to his room. Now he had the top of the line LP player, record player, top of the line. You couldn't touch it. He had white gloves when he handled this. He had every LP at that time that came out on John Coltrane. He loved John Coltrane. He loved Eric Dolphy, and he played saxophone. So as
Yeah.
I played flute, he said to me, "Hey man, the fingering is very similar." And
Right.
he let me borrow one of his horns, and I would take it to my room and just start messing around. But that's when I really got turned on to the saxophone.
Okay.
And then from there, it was just taking lessons and connecting with people. And then also, I got the John Coltrane bug as well, because listening with him, we used to, on Friday nights have a glass of wine and put on Coltrane. And I got so heavy into Coltrane that actually the first saxophone that I purchased was a soprano, because
Okay.
I had heard My Favorite Things, Chim Chim Cherie, Afro Blue, Softly in the Morning Sunrise. These are all songs that Train recorded on soprano. And it wasn't until I went to Jazzmobile when before I graduated from college. Maybe I was 21, 22. I went to Jazzmobile in Harlem. That was a very important place to study jazz, and you could study for free. I think it was $5 to register. That was it. And the teachers that they had, they were incredible. Frank Foster, Ernie Wilkins, Chris Woods, Thad Jones, Paul West, Charlie Persip, Freddie Waits, Benny Powell, Jimmy Owens, and Jimmy Heath. And Jimmy Heath, I wound up in his class. He was one of my first Jazzmobile teachers. And the first thing he said to me, he said, well, okay, so what do you play? I said, flute and soprano sax. He said, okay. He said, who do you listen to? I said, John Coltrane. He said, okay. He said, what about before Coltrane? I said, I don't know who's before Coltrane. He said, have you ever heard of Charlie Parker? I said, no. He said, okay. you come to my house. And I went to his house in Queens.
Mhm.
I walked in the living room, and the very first thing I see is this big picture on the wall. And it's Jimmy Heath conducting a big band. So his back, and if you look at the photo, you see his back, because he's
Right.
conducting. And the guy taking a solo next to him on alto is Charlie Parker. And the saxophone that he's playing is Jimmy Heath's alto, because Bird didn't have a horn. Sometimes he pawned his horn,
Mhm.
for various reasons. So he was playing Jimmy's horn, and sitting in the sax section was my idol, John Coltrane. But he had a cigarette in his hand, and he was looking at Charlie Parker in
Play.
utter amazement. So he was like that. So I said to myself, if that's my idol looking at that guy
I
like
gotta go
that,
check that guy
I
out.
gotta find out what that guy is doing. That's why I got turned on to Bird.
Research.
And
Yeah.
you know what's so funny, Dion? When I left Jimmy's house, I was living in the village on East 4th Street between B and C. And I got off the train at Second Avenue. There was a music store on the corner of Second Avenue and 4th Street. And as I walked by, they had an alto saxophone for sale. It
Mhm.
was a Selma. It wasn't a Mark Six, but it was an older model, but it was sitting in the window, and they wanted $200 for it. I called my mom right away. She said, "Look, I'll put in 100. You put in 100."
Mhm.
I got it. And that
So
was it. I got it. And there was no turning back from that
right.
point. That was
Wow.
it. That
Wow.
was it.
Just from spending that day with Jimmy Heath.
Just for spending that day with Jimmy Heath.
Yeah.
I
Well,
got
it's
happy.
destiny, man. Because ever since I've known you, you've always respect you, like you said, mentoring and wisdom of the elders. You've always had respect for the elders and talked
Oh
about
yeah.
influence and been grateful for the information that you've received. So
I
I
definitely.
understand and respect that path because you live it and you talk about it all the time. I mean, we have a lot of mutual friends and you've
Mhm.
always helped people, especially people that have assisted you in some way in high
Of
regard. So
course.
it's part of the journey. Yeah, man. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
of course. Well,
Yeah.
Jimmy told me, and he was very practical too, because Jimmy said to me, "Listen, man," he said to me when I told him I only played soprano and flute, he said, "Listen, man, if you want to work in New York or anywhere as a musician, you're going to have to get you a tenor or an alto,
Right.
because nobody's going to call you who
For
plays
just
soprano
yeah.
and flute. They're going to call a tenor or alto player who
Who
doubles
doubles,
on
right.
soprano." So he's very practical. He says, so if you want to work on Broadway, if you want to work on gigs, you got to get a tenor or an alto. And that's how we got to talking about it. Then he told me about Charlie Parker. And then he played some Charlie Parker recordings, and I got that Omni book and things like that. So yeah, that really opened me up to a whole nother world. And then I started really digging back, going even before Bird, and listening to the elders and the older cats, Buster Smith and uh, what's the name? I just recorded one of his songs too, Southside Samba. Man, I'm looking right at his face. A great alto saxophonist. He played violin. He's one of the early pioneers, and he wrote for a lot of old films. I'm having a senior moment, but it'll come
Well,
back.
I know what you're saying. I mean, it's important to know where the information comes from because, like you mentioned, you're checking out Train, but he got it from a number of sources. He got it from
Exactly,
Monk also playing with Monk,
exactly,
from
exactly,
Miles. Even though
exactly.
they had a different instrumentation,
Yeah,
but all of that is part of his upbringing and his influence, and that's part of mentoring folks and letting them know, hey, you might be into someone, but you got to check out who they checked out, and
exactly.
yeah, because if you trace a lot of it back, you can hear the influences go way back to the early 1900s.
Sure.
And
Benny Carter, that's the one I was
Benny Carter,
trying to
yeah.
get at. Benny Carter, yeah. Benny Carter, man, he's before Bird.
Hmm.
And he wrote for films, and he's a fantastic saxophonist and composer and arranger.
Hmm.
I mean, Benny Carter was royalty. He
Hmm.
was one of the early pioneers who actually starred. I mean, he was in many of these old movies, playing, and when they had musical scenes, he was in the movies playing.
Right, right.
Yeah, Benny Carter. Oh
That's
man.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
I want to, for the sake of time, I want to jump ahead. I
Uh-huh.
know you talked about your education at NYU and Teachers College and everything, but I want to jump ahead to some of the opportunities that you had performing with some of the great folks. Like
Hmm.
you know, you lived in Paris for a while. Uh,
Hmm.
how did you end up in Paris?
Well, I had the first major gig that I landed after graduating from graduate school was with Abdullah Ibrahim, the
Hmm.
South African pianist, because I used to play with another brother in New York called Indiko Ngaba. He was a Zulu, and
Hmm.
he played piano and percussion, and he introduced me to Abdullah, and we had a nice vibe. And Abdullah had a concert coming up, and he called me out of the clear blue and said, "Hey, man, I want you to play with me at Alice Tully Hall, and we're going to record the next day." I said, "Wow."
Hmm.
That was my first recording. And so it was called this, the record is called The Journey on Curious Squirrel Records. That was the very first recording. And believe it or not, by that time, this is now the late 70s, I had branched out. I was playing flute, uh, soprano, alto, and also I got an oboe. And I was,
Okay.
because one of my teachers, just backing up a little bit, when I studied at Jazzmobile, but there were some other organizations that I also studied at the same time. Another one was Jazz Interactions. Joe Newman ran that program. Billy Mitchell taught there, but also I studied with Rassan Roland Kirk, flute.
Okay.
And when Rassan couldn't make it, he had Yusef Latif as his sub. So Yusef influenced me because he played the oboe. He played all the reeds. So I started playing oboe, and I played oboe pretty proficiently for a minute. I stopped eventually. It was just I didn't have enough time to play all those instruments and really practice them well. So, but at the time when I met Abdullah, I was playing a lot of oboe. So I played oboe on his recording, The Journey, and he toured. That was the first time I did tours in Europe. Was with him. And after 3 years, I played with him from '77 to 1980. I decided I needed a change. I didn't have too many gigs happening at that time. I didn't have any teaching opportunities, so I decided let me go back to Europe. I had been there already on tours, and I met people. So that's when I left. I left in '81. I stayed in Switzerland for 2.5 months with some friends I met, and from there, I made my way to Paris, and I wound up working right away when I got to Paris. And I stayed with a musician for a couple of months, and then I found my own apartment, and I never looked back. So, I was just following my dreams, and also being over there enabled me to play with additional heavyweights that I wouldn't have had the opportunity, like Mal Waldron. Had a
Mhm.
chance to play with Mal Archie Shep. Archie was living in France at that time.
Right.
And a lot of folks would come through there. Clifford Jordan had opportunity, and I played with Kenny Clark. Before
Okay.
he passed, that was an amazing opportunity for me to meet Clute. He was there with Bird, and I would hang out with him at the New Morning. And anytime Dizzy would come through, or Dexter Gordon,
Hmm.
Johnny Griffin, to hear these cats talk about the old days, man.
Right. Right.
Yeah, Max. I had a chance to hang out with Max, but Clute, I played with him, and Lou Bennett was the organ player that lived over there. He was a phenomenal organ player, and Richard Williams, the trumpeter. They called him Notes. He was
Mhm.
also through Paris a lot. So I wound up playing with a lot of those guys. And Hal Singer, who was used to call him Cornbread. He lived to be, I think, 100, 101. Tenor player,
Mhm.
great tenor player. But yeah, Paris was wide open. But that also solidified my connection with Randy Weston, because before
Okay.
I left New York, we did a gig together. He called me for a gig. He heard me play with Abdullah, and he called me to play with him at Reverend Daughtry's church in Brooklyn in 1980. But now when I'm living in Paris, he actually was living in France himself. He was living in Annecy in the south eastern part of France. And he heard I was in Paris. He contacted me right away and said, "Look, man, we're going to do some gigs. I got a gig. In fact, it was July of 1982. I got a gig at San Sebastian Jazz Festival." And so it was trio, me, him, and a percussionist, and we literally opened. We played in a bull arena, and we opened for Winton, That was Wynton's
Okay.
first tour, I believe, as a leader, because I had just seen Wynton a few months prior with Art Blakey. And so he got the contract, I think, with Columbia, and that was it. That summer, '82, he was off and running. And the first time I heard Bradford playing tenor, because when I first heard Bradford, he was playing alto. He was
Hmm.
also playing with Art Blakey. So it was a very, very rich experience. And I'll tell you, Dion, Paris for me during the '80s was so beautiful because there were no lines of demarcation. You could
Right.
play hip hop, you could play funk, you could play African music, you could play avant garde, you could play straight ahead, hard bop, bebop. If people heard you play and they like your sound, they'd hire you no matter what the style.
Right.
In New
Right.
York, though, in New York, if they hear you playing free, they're not going to call you for a straight ahead gig. If they hear you playing, Horace Silver or Blakey, they may not call you for a Cecil Taylor type of gig. If they
Hmm.
hear you playing funk, they may not call you for a Latin gig. See, but
Right.
over there it was wide open. You could play
Right.
all those styles, and that's what I loved about being over there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I really respect and appreciate your relationship with Randy because I know that was Randy when you guys moved back to the US and Randy would perform. I mean, he had a band and that's one of the things that I loved about New York when I came to New York in the 90s. There were bands like cats in that
Yes, yeah, and you had a
band.
group sound. You had a group sound.
Yeah, that don't really
Yeah,
exist anymore like that
right,
anymore because now it's
right.
like, whoever's available play the gig,
It's
but back then,
freelance, right?
yeah,
Like
and
you have
even
a
when you
group
guys,
sound with your
yeah,
band.
yeah,
It's the
yeah,
same. You have
exactly,
a
yeah,
group
and that was
sound.
part of it. I mean, I was adamant about like, you need to have a sound because you don't have that anymore. And I even appreciate when you guys do Randy Weston tributes, it's still the cast from the band.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And we have a certain sound. Yeah, we're gonna like, for example, we're gonna do something in the summer with Jazzmobile. It's gonna be tribute to Randy and Jimmy Heath because both of them have centennials this year. And
right.
remarkably, they only played together once, and it was in
Okay.
2016 in Detroit. And we were playing. Randy and I were special guests with the Wayne State University Big Band. We were playing Melba Liston arrangements of Randy's music. We were special guests, and Jimmy was there with his band, and he wandered over to where we were playing. He had his tenor, so Randy said, "Come on, man, get that horn out." And Jimmy came. We did High Fly. He came up and played High Fly. It was marvelous. So
That's
we're
great.
gonna play this summer with Antonio Hart's going to direct the big band, Jimmy Heath Big Band,
Mhm.
and it's interesting because I said to Antonio, well, so you want us to join you guys? And he said, no, I want you guys to play with just your group. So we're going to play like a set with just Randy's band because we have that sound, and he said he wants to hear the sound that we get. So with Alex Blake, Neil Clark, Sharp Radway on piano, and Frank Lacey on trombone. We're going to play a set, and then Jimmy's big band will play a set, and at the end we'll do one song together. But
Right.
I appreciate what Antonio was saying about having that sound,
Yeah.
and that's the sound you want
It,
to.
it doesn't it doesn't exist as prominent or it doesn't exist as often as it used to, and that
Right,
sound for cats is like it's just something. I mean, I just remember going to hear Fort Apache and hearing Art Blakey and
right,
Max Rose
right,
and Roy Haynes and Elvin Jones Jazz Machine, and then you had
right.
all the horn players. It's like everybody had their sound and
Oh
had the
yeah,
band, and it was just
and
so
their
amazing.
repertoire. Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
Taylor's Wailers, and it was yeah, that don't
And
exist.
this, no, and this thing that you said about all those groups you named, the interesting thing is that you will never see any music on the bandstand. Those cats knew they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they knew
You
what they
know,
were doing. They spent
music.
so much
Yeah,
time together. That's what it
right,
was.
right, right.
But speaking of band, you shared some of your music with us, and I want to thank you for sharing those stories. And there's a lot of
Mhm.
information that I know you still have to offer, but I want to get to some of your music because the
Sure.
audience, we always have to take our audience and our listeners into consideration. They hear so much about your story, and it's like, well, I want to hear this guy play.
Right. Sure. Sure.
So you shared some of your music with us, and the first song you shared is a song called "Cash Bar." 330. And can you tell us briefly what that song is about before we
Yeah,
play it?
Caspar 330A. 330A is the address of Dr. Randy Weston's home that he used to live in on Lafayette Avenue in Brooklyn.
Okay.
330A Lafayette Avenue. And Caspar is a place of learning, a security. It's a haven. It's a safe place. It's a learned place. And Randy's home was like a university because he had an incredible collection of books on Africa, on African history, on African American history. Because see, he was born in 1926, so he grew up in the period when it was acute discrimination and segregation. He had to sit at the top of the movie theater. He had to sit in the back of the bus, things like that. So he was always on a mission to unfurl the facts about Africa. He wasn't satisfied that he was only told his history began with slavery. He wanted to find out what came before slavery. What about the
Right.
great civilizations, the universities, Fez, Timbuktu, Alexandria, Kush? What about, all these areas, Dahomey, these great empires where they had brain surgery, astrology, mathematics, language, the whole thing way before Europe had it, way before the rest of the world. So that's why he was heavy into collecting books on these subjects, and
Okay.
that's so that song is dedicated to his home.
Beautiful. Well, let's check it out. Cash
All
Bar
right.
330A.
Mhm.
All right.
All right. Yeah, that
That's
brings back memories.
that
Yeah, yeah.
was Alex Blake on bass, right?
Yeah, Alex Blake,
Okay.
Vince Hector on drums,
Okay. Great.
Sharp Radway on piano, and I don't think there's any percussion on that, but Neil was on the record date as well.
Okay. And
Yeah,
that's
she
sharp.
was on
Okay.
as well. Yep.
Nice, beautiful. We have wow. I haven't heard much straight ahead jazz on the radio in some time. Beautiful. I love that alto. Is that an alto sax you're blowing? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, yeah. I was to say, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Randy
Hard
loves a
bop, but
hard
it's
bop.
hard bop, but it's like a funk. You put this funk
Yeah,
pocket
you
on
got a
top.
little funk thing up on. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I
Mhm.
love it all. Yeah, that's Sharp Radway on the piano and Alex Blake on bass, Vince Hector on the drums. Yeah, I use this record. I wanted to use all the musicians that played with Randy.
Mhm.
Vince Hector was on the projects we did dedicated to James Reese Europe. And I
Okay.
did the arrangement. It was a 9-piece band. And James Reese Europe was a phenomenal figure in jazz. Nobody talks about him. He's actually the first one to take jazz out of the United States. It was in the 19 during World War One
Mhm.
in 19 teens, 16, 17. He went to France. The Harlem Hellfighters, 369th Infantry, was
Mhm.
all black regiment, and they played music. They fought the Germans in the day, and at night they played music, kind of a form of ragtime. And
Right.
he had a large ensemble, and he was very influential to promote jazz. James,
Right.
he was the absolute first. And Randy, he always pays tribute to these kind of people. So he wrote some songs, and I arranged them for 9-piece band. We had tuba, and banjo, trombone, saxophone, piano, bass, drums, percussion. Yeah, so that was uh,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful.
That's why I had
Great.
Vince and Alex, of course, and Sharp is a protege. He used to
Mhm.
hang out with Randy. All he used to go to his house. And today, if you when you hear Sharp play Randy's music, and you close your eyes, you think it's Randy playing because he has really internalized his voicings. He doesn't just read charts on his music. He memorizes it, and he memorizes how he voiced the chords and all of that. So
Right.
Sharp really has the sound that Randy got on the piano.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, let's check out some more of the music that you shared with us.
Okay.
The next song is entitled "The Wise One Speaks." Yeah.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah,
check this
yeah,
out.
yeah. The wise one speaks. All
Yeah, let's
right.
let's check it out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
know
Yeah.
that's like a meditation piece.
Yeah. I'm playing I'm playing a few things on this recording. I'm playing soprano sax on the solo and the melody. I'm playing flute backgrounds. And then I'm playing the African hand piano.
Right.
This particular one is called the Sanza. You
Okay.
know, they have. I've been a student of the African hand piano since the '70s. I met a brother named Nadi Kamar, and he was an elder. In fact, he just passed away during the pandemic. He made 102, 103, and he really got me into the African hand piano. He used to make them. He had one
Mhm.
called the Mama Lukembe. It had over 100 keys. He could play changes. He could play giant steps. He could play chords on it. You know,
Mm.
so I have the Sanza, and that's the one I was playing on this particular track. I have also Lukembe, I have Mbira, I have a Kalimba, and I have also one called Bongo. These are different names for these African instruments. And the gentlemen, people that play them in Africa, are normally the griot or jolly, and they are
Right.
oral historians of their particular area. So
Beautiful.
that was, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Well, let's continue with the next composition, and this one is entitled. Let's just jump right into it for the sake of time. This one is entitled "Valley of the Blue Rose."
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Valley of the Blue Rose. So
All
so
right.
I'm enjoying the changes, man. The changes of can you tell us about the changes of that tune over
Yeah.
that
Well,
group?
what's happening? That's a song. Valley of the Blue Rose is from the recording Planet Blue.
Mhm.
And Planet Blue was a dream that I had of a place because we have so much disunity on the planet right now. All the wars and things, political disunity. So Planet Blue was a dream I had of a place that there was no war, there was no weapons, there was no fighting. Everybody lived in peace. There was no passports, there were no borders, there's no pollution. There's no privilege from one group of people over another. It's an ideal place. It's a utopia. You exchange. There's no money. You exchange services instead of money. You might help your neighbor build a house. They might teach your kids how to read and write. And also on Planet Blue, there's no doctors because if you get ill, you call a musician and they come to your home and play for you and they
Mhm.
make you feel better. So that's Planet Blue. And Valley of the Blue Rose is just a place on Planet Blue where you have abundance of flowers. And the blue rose is the most potent rose. So guys, if you want to buy your lady some roses on Valentine's Day, buy her some blue roses because they have the strongest fragrance, stronger than the red rose. So that's Valley of the Blue Rose.
Okay, okay. That's something
And
to
that,
think
oh, by
about.
the way, that was some
Yeah.
great musicians on there. Young, these are all the young. These are the next great musicians coming along. That was Wallace Roney Jr. on trumpet. He's the son of Wallace and Jerry. That was Orion Touré on drums, the son of Steve Touré. That was Deshaun Harper on bass, he's the nephew of Winard and Philip Harper. His father's Danny Harper, all musicians. And unfortunately, Deshaun passed away last
Mhm.
year. We really miss him. He was quite young. He was only 31. And then
What did Deshaun play?
he played bass.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then on piano was Davis Whitfield. He's the son of Mark Whitfield. So these are
Right.
all the children who are become young masters in their own right, and they're taking care of business, all of them.
Mhm.
You know.
Nice. Beautiful.
Hmm.
Beautiful. Man, this has been a pleasure having you on the show, man. Our time is about up, but I wanted to thank you for being on the
Hmm.
show. And we have one more song before we play it. I
Okay.
just, just just I just wanted to take the time to thank you because I know you're so busy and you're doing so many things, but it's been a
No, my
pleasure.
pleasure, Dion. No, it's my pleasure. You're an incredible friend and musician. I had the utmost respect for all of the stuff that you've been doing with your band, and
Yeah.
it's always consistently great music. And you have a great sound. I could hear. All I have to hear is a couple of notes that I can say, "Oh, that's the 21st century. That's the 21st century band." So it's been a pleasure. And I
Yeah.
hope we have an opportunity to play again together because we're long overdue. We done some things way back in the past, so hopefully that opportunity will arise again. In fact,
Right.
I may be relocating to the island. So
Oh
because
yeah. Okay.
yeah, we
Okay.
got land. We have my wife and I. We have land in the family that's in the Luther part of the
Okay.
Bahamas.
Okay.
And in fact, we're going to be going down there this fall. And
Hmm.
if things go well, we may put something up on the land, So that's
Okay.
what we're looking at. Yeah, yeah,
Beautiful, man. Well, come
yeah. I
on down.
want
It's
yeah, man. I want to get to
down here.
another thing, And the islands is definitely happening. The Caribbean, there's a whole
Yeah.
circuit down there.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I
Beautiful.
met the saxophonist Luther Francois, who's a
Hmm.
great tenor player from Saint Lucia, and
Yeah.
plus Trinidad. There's a lot of
A
there's a
bunch of
scene.
cats. You got Arturo Toppin up in the Bahamas also
Was
doing his
right.
thing.
There you
It's a
go.
bunch of cats. Yeah, a
Yeah.
bunch of cats throughout the Caribbean, and not only that came from the Caribbean, but that's here now still doing their thing. So, but
Right,
we'll
right.
talk about that. We'll talk about that offline.
Yep.
But let me jump into this last song because
Okay.
I want to make sure we get all of your music in before
No
the show.
problem.
Yeah. So
Sure.
this Planet Blue. This is a title
The
song
title
from the
track. Yeah.
title track from the latest album. And when did the
Right.
album come out?
It came out October of 2024.
Okay,
Hmm.
great. So let's check this out. Planet Blue.
Okay.
Yes, that's
Hey,
Planet Blue by
yes,
TK.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that was
that's the same
nice.
personnel.
Yeah,
Listen,
same personnel, but that in that cut though we added Steve Torre on trombone.
okay,
Yeah, Steve
okay.
was on that cut. Yeah, but the
That's
same
Wallace Rhodes
personnel. Yeah,
Jr. on trumpet.
yeah. With Wallace Roney Jr. What's his name? Davis Whitfield, Mark Whitfield's
Mhm.
son on piano. Deshaun Harper on bass. Orion Torre on drums.
Okay,
Yeah. And the
beautiful,
other
beautiful.
person on this recording, we didn't hear him on these tracks. We just did one song in duo was Dave Kakowski, great
Okay,
pianist. He played in duo with me on When It's Time to Say Goodbye.
beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
And
But
it
thank you
has
so
really
much
been,
for playing the recording stuff on the recording, man. I really, really appreciate it.
yeah,
It's,
man,
yeah,
definitely. I
yeah.
know you have so many other recordings out and stuff, and I would encourage our audience to, Google you and check you out and support you. Matter of
Mhm.
fact, can you tell them how they can follow you and how they can find,
Yeah, the
your
best is if you go to my website, www.tkblue.com. You can
Mhm.
buy recordings there. You can see the schedule where I'm performing, and you can see video clips, all kind of stuff like that. So, and I updated the gig page. So we have a lot of things coming up, and I'm going to be traveling soon. After I play Dizzy, I'll be going to California, and then
When are you at Disney's?
I'll be at Dizzy's April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Yeah, we're honoring Randy. We'll be with the African Rhythms Alumni Quintet, and
Mhm.
then we leave the following week to play at San Francisco SF Jazz, also the Museum of the African Diaspora, and also
Mhm.
the Walala Music Festival up north in California. So I'm
Okay.
looking forward. Yeah, in May we have some things in May. I have some things in May, and then at the end of May I'm going to France. I'll be there
Okay.
for 1 month. And during that time, I'm going to travel to Morocco to do 2 concerts for Randy.
Beautiful.
So
Beautiful.
yeah,
That's
so
great, man. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time out of us
man,
of
it's
your
my
yeah.
pleasure, Dion. And God
Thank you,
bless you,
man.
man, for the work you're doing. And
Yes, sir.
please, I hope everybody supports you and check you out because you're an iconic figure in this music and a very important element of this music, an integral part of this music. So,
Thank you, man. Thank you. I
so yeah,
appreciate it.
man,
All
definitely.
right, man. You take care, brother, and continue
Take care.
success to you and all the great projects you're doing and all the great music you're playing. All right. Take
God bless
care,
you,
and we'll
brother.
talk soon. Yes, that's the one and only TK Blue, joining us today, on Sounds of the Diaspora, telling his story. It's been a minute catching up with him, man. I haven't seen him in a while, and he's a long term friend. So I really appreciate him hanging out with us in the studio. Come back next week and join us on Sounds of the Diaspora as we bring you the one and only Mr. Freddie Bryant, as he present his music and story to you guys. So we look forward to seeing you next week on another wonderful episode of Sounds of the Diaspora. My name is Dion Parson, and it's really been a pleasure presenting for you, and hope you guys come back next week and join us. And we wish you a wonderful, beautiful, and blessed evening. Take care and have a good night.